Tell them what you do, they'll tell you who you are. We will travel far, we will travel far. Tell me what you like and I will bring.
Divine Source, Great Spirit, we come this day with empty minds and empty hearts, ready to be filled by your grace and your love, ready to be shown how to move through this talk and collaboration. Speak to us and through us for the highest good of all. And so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Jutta, and I'm back with my friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, and we're coming together today with an idea to talk about the parts that we need to play in life and on the spiritual path. And yeah, I know we've talked about roles and parts in the past and kind of went at it from a place of playing roles in the world and what that looks like and how that plays out. And today it seems like Spirit wants to come at it from a bit of a different angle and really drive home this idea that all of us have a really important part to play on this journey, and an important part for not only ourselves but for the whole. And yeah, as always, we just come together with a prayer, really, to play our parts today. Elizabeth and I always come empty, like she said in her prayer today. And yeah, so we're here, empty vessels, and just willing to receive what part we want to play today, or what part the Spirit wants us to play today, and see where this topic is meant to go. So thanks for joining us, and let's see where it goes.
I was just having come to mind all of the years, just really very strong time-based sense, all of the time-related thoughts and conversations and energy put towards being something and someone in the world. And this conversation is really, as always, but it's good to kind of put the fine point on things at times. You know, this conversation is about the greater vision that we're called to. And so this conversation is not about the roles in the world. We may look like we play roles in the world as we're on our spiritual journey, but we're really talking about the vision that the Spirit has for us in expressing our divinity while we seem to be in the world. So be in the world, but not of it. And to be elevated in our thinking so that we can receive the guidance and the clarity about what it is we're to be doing moment by moment. And a big part of the purification is about getting to the place where we have the kind of clarity that we're talking about. And for me, it's been hard won, but there is a vision that the Spirit has for us that kind of is bucking the system, you might say, in every way that we think of how the world operates. You know, the world generally, for how many of us got programmed, maybe you're an enlightened being listening to this and you have a different experience, but most of us got the me against you, us against them, do what you do to try to survive and maybe even be top dog and a so-called success in the world. And that kind of thinking never made sense to me. You know, I very clearly as a kid saw competition on the playground and in my family, and it didn't add up. And it certainly didn't feel good. It was always something that produced anxiety and a sense of disconnection in my mind. The way the world worked led me to feeling alone, empty, discouraged, depressed, like I had to tough it out and find a way to make it all work. And for me, that was a recipe for disaster and was a recipe for misery, total misery. And so I needed, as I've said in pretty much every talk, I needed a new way. And I was told, and I heard messages very clearly from the Spirit throughout my life that there was a new way for me available and that I really needed to choose it. And it seemed like I took actions and did things in the world to help me kind of move in that direction. But it was all actually really an inside job, as they say. So very definitely, I felt as a child, I had this message in my mind, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. I didn't really know what that message was, but I heard it over and over again in my own mind as a kid, all through my life. And for me, that message was, don't forget that you're here for awakening and to serve the greater awakening. Point blank, end of story, really. But getting to that clarity, again, took a lot of purification because I was told by family and my schools and friends and employers that I was here for a very different purpose. I was here to make money or help a business or find a partner or be somebody in the world. And again, that whole program did not work for me on any level whatsoever. And so as I faced the hard truth about not being happy, about being really miserable, about none of it making any sense to me, I became more and more open-minded to the Spirit. And as I did that, I was led into new arenas to learn about myself, but also to play a role. And I saw, as I worked more and more with the Spirit, how the Spirit had been working through my whole life. I just didn't necessarily see it that way. So we do have specific job duties here spiritually. And if I feel like there's any one message I want to communicate today for the Spirit is find your job spiritually. Find how the Spirit wants to move through you, because for me, it's the only thing that has given me any sense of peace in my mind, any sense of proper alignment, any sense that I'm actually doing something of value. So that's what's coming up here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, as we were talking, I was kind of just reflecting back on my life as well. And I think one of the sort of bigger energetics that I was in growing up, especially, was to not be noticed. So it's almost like I didn't want to have any roles or parts because it meant that there would be attention towards me. And I think most of the attention that I got growing up, especially in school, was more on the negative side. So I kind of was just like feeling like, no, I don't really want to play any parts here. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get through school and then be done with it. And yeah, so it's an interesting meditation to watch now, where I'm at now, because I actually don't mind having a spotlight on me now, which, that's a very small spotlight, probably compared to most people. But, we are doing these recordings and kind of putting ourselves out here. And so my part has definitely changed. Like, I don't mind playing a part now because, like you said, there's a part given by the Spirit, and I do really want to play that one because that's the one where I can find expansion and learn of who I really am, which isn't this body or this personality. It goes so much further and beyond any of those small ideas. Yeah, so I like what you said about, find find your job, find your spiritual job. I agree. It's a really important bit to this. And I also think that there are small smaller parts. Maybe we only play them once, like in conversations, in who knows what kind of situations we might come into on this journey. And in each of those situations, there's always a part for us to play. And a lot of times, with how the spiritual journey goes, that part isn't the one that we're most comfortable with, usually. When we were talking beforehand, before we pressed the record button, I was just sort of reflecting about this idea that, I've been in situations where it felt like the small part of my mind didn't feel like it really had a part to play in some situations because I was surrounded by maybe seemingly more spiritually advanced people, or just people advanced further in age than me. So I was the young one, and it felt like there was no part for me there. But when, you know, when stuff like that comes up for me, I usually just observe and kind of put it to the side and try to move through as if that thought hadn't even occurred. And it allows me to do play the part that I'm meant to be playing in those moments. And the reflections are always so amazing when that happens, because there's always so much gratitude because of something I said, or because of something I did, a hug, or, just an understanding glance in somebody's direction. And or even just being space for somebody to express something that they're scared to share. And so I really I love the roles that spirit gives me to play. I love, being able to feel what parts I am to be playing in any moment. And I do like the image too of playing parts, because kind of makes me think of, a theatrical play or a movie, and everybody has these assigned parts. And I feel like it's like that with this world too. Sometimes we talk about this world kind of being like a movie or a dream, and everybody, yeah, everybody is part of this script. And that script that we want to really be lined up with is the script that the spirit has for us and for the whole. More importantly, the whole script for the entirety of us. And what greater role could you be playing than the one that the spirit has assigned to you in that script? So yeah, I think, I can say for both of us here that our prayer is always to see what part in the script am I playing right now, whether that's in our, close relationships, or whether it's while we're walking through the grocery store, or we have to talk to the librarian about a new library membership, or, just encounters with strangers on the street. There's always a script running, and there's always a part for us to play. And the whole picture doesn't really come together when we're afraid to play our parts, and when we want to be small and defer to other people, perhaps because, we think we know what their roles are and have assumed that we have smaller smaller roles, perhaps. And yeah, so I think, we're always in that prayer to see which parts am I playing here. And it kind of is this string that helps you go through each day, really. I'm kind of seeing, like, when there's these really deep free divers that go without oxygen, they usually have this line that they kind of follow down and also follow back up. And that's kind of the image that I get when I think about these parts and these roles that the spirit wants us to assume. It's that line to to the light. So yeah, that's kind of where my mind went with that for now.
Yeah, there's so many angles and layers and levels to this conversation. And yeah, I was just, as you were mentioning the string before our talk, just to, again, get a little more clarity, I felt guided to look at some of my tarot deck. And the first card that came forth for this conversation was this woman embracing this massive butterfly. And then around her, she has all these other little butterflies, different colors, different sizes and shapes. And she's sort of painting this beautiful scene with and on the butterfly. And then right after it came this Emperor card, and he's kind of like a Napoleon, sort of a guy in a courtyard, with all of his little peons below him, beneath him, with all these cords. He's like the puppet master. He's got a string on every single individual. And the card came upside down, which for me is indicative of you don't get the butterflies and the vision and the transformation and the beauty and the joy and the grace and the delight and the innocence being the emperor that treats people as a lesser than. On this card, it's a big, big emperor, and he's got teeny tiny little beings that he's basically manipulating. And the devil came out next to him upside down as well. And so again, the spirit's vision is going to be counter or contrary to those two images or those two archetypes or those two energetics. The spirit's vision, as far as I've experienced it, is about inclusivity and equality, and that very much experienced and embodied expression of we all have our part to play. None is more important than another. The mind has a massive problem with thinking hierarchically. It does not see itself unified and in right relation with everything within it or seemingly without. So the spirit's got a big job to do to humble us and to show us that this dream of the me, I, my as top dog on the scene, here to try to exert its power and its influence on the world and its fellows, it's got a big job reorienting us. And the strings, as we talked about in other talks, can be this beautiful symbol of the music, the web of life, the interconnection, or it can be used as a means to bind and limit and manipulate and exert influence over. And it's a lot about that choice in our own minds. It's a lot about that choice of which world, which dream, which experience do I want to invest in? And the spirit, for me, has constantly been, my whole life, inviting me into a space within my mind that is in right relation with everything, and that is seeking a place where I'm no better, no worse than my fellows. I'm no more important or less important than my fellows. And for me, when I have found those moments of grace where I see the spirit is just using me as an instrument in an orchestra to play a piece of music in my specific way. I gave a friend a little bit of a jab the other day in a talk about I'm just here to be my authentic self. I kind of have a problem with that idea generally, but it's like there is an element of what he was saying that is this conversation. We're here to do what the spirit wants us to do as seeming individuals. And if we play our part, then the spirit can create the most amazing music. And if we don't, there becomes a discordant piece of music that gets played. And that can have its place. That can be helpful. That can be providing a disruptor that can help break things down. But we've spent eons with the discordant music being played. And it's generally maintained a story and a dream of suffering. And as far as I know, what Utah's called to and what I'm called to, we're called out of the suffering. And we're called to be demonstrations of a new way, or maybe just a new to us way, because the Spirit's way is actually eternal. And it's always been available. So we're invited to a new way for the mind and maybe this moment for some of us. But that vision is holistic. It is serving the highest good of all. And again, how do we just get in our proper alignment to be able to not only be a vehicle for it, but to also enjoy it and see the amazing grace in it? That's when things can be really fun and juicy. So.
Yeah, while you're talking, I think what's really ringing in my mind is just, kind of this reminder, I would say most everybody gets on the spiritual path, their own spiritual path, because something isn't working. There's unhappiness, there's distress, there's a feeling of loss, not really having a place in the world. And really, probably the sense of feeling unsure around how to deal with life in a way that doesn't make us feel unhappy or distressed or anxious or angry, And this idea that, there must be a different way, there has to be a better way. And there's a little quote that I saw, I don't know who it was from, but I just saw it yesterday on Instagram, and it said, in order for things to change, you have to change, or you have to be willing to change. And I think, it's a really important kind of thing to keep in mind, that this whole path really requires some deep change in us. And it requires that we come at life in a different way, in a changed way, and a way that we haven't really done before. So, and when we talk about these parts that we have to play, in a way, they're parts that we don't really know. It's a really kind of, it's the whole thing is very much unknown, but there's a way to get into the flow with it and get in the flow with the spirit, where being in the unknown isn't so uncomfortable. But I was just thinking, like everybody, I would say, has relationships that feel confusing to them, and there's discordance, and there's situations where it seems like the communication just isn't happening. It's not flowing. We're not understanding each other. And the only way really to deal with those kind of situations is to want another way, and have this prayer in our minds for the spirit to show us how, in this new and different way, we should approach here. And like I said, like that can feel really uncomfortable and really different. But again, like to bring that quote back, like for a new outcome to happen, we have to make changes within ourselves and have to do things in different ways and do things in new ways. And, that's these roles that we're talking about. They're not just something fun, that we do for fun. Like, oh, I'm going to play Spirit's role now. I'm going to play whatever role Spirit has me play now. There's a reason that we even want to get in touch with what the Spirit wants us to do. And And it's this that, things that previously seemed like we didn't know how to deal with, or they led to confusion and, yeah, miscommunications in relationships and stuff like that, or at your job or anything, that these kind of things can be addressed in new ways. And they are addressed through these pieces that we have to play in those moments, because oftentimes we're just stuck in some automatic behavior that actually feeds the situations we don't like. It feeds those situations that are uncomfortable and make us feel unhappy and make us feel disconnected. And we don't, I found for myself that I'm so done with wanting to feed these old automatic stories. And I see it in my relationships mostly because I don't I don't get out very much. So I have my husband here with me, and when we first started living together, there were these times where it was just like, it was almost like once a month we had this really stupid argument. And when something like that happens, it's like, okay, what's going on? There's something happening here, right? And there has to be a new way. And through observation and prayer, I could see the part I was playing in making those situations worse and feeding them, not necessarily making them worse, but feeding them so that they would, take longer to resolve. And I saw that part that I was playing there and realized there's a different part I can play. And a lot of the ways that the spirit seems to want to be through me is very lighthearted. And so it's just not happening anymore. We don't have those once a month fights anymore because I can see the moments where maybe they could establish, and we just don't want to do it anymore. So we don't feed it when it could possibly happen. So there's different roles that we assume very actively, I think, at least for myself and my own experience, in those moments where something could escalate. There is a role that I can assume that actually makes it not go there, makes it not escalate. And to me, that's a miracle, because sometimes those things are super confusing, and it's like you just want to know what to do. And well, with this prayer to the spirit and with the desire underneath to have connection and have the love flowing, and to make that the most important thing, instead of making it more important that your point comes across, or somebody else's point gets, pushed away and they're made wrong or something like that. It's so much more important that there is the connection, and it's just, things just flow when you start to really get into the habit of actively wanting things to be better, and things, be connected, and come from this place of, what would the spirit have me do here? It's just inevitable. And like you said, like, when we all do assume our proper positions that have nothing to do with hierarchy, and, others being further along than me, or me being further along than somebody else, or, me having a better title than somebody, and all of these weird hierarchies that play out in this world, when that's irrelevant, we can really assume our parts, and this beautiful picture or this beautiful piece of music, like you said, can really take shape and be admired and be enjoyed. And yeah, that's, that's really the joy of the spiritual path, that I think before we started recording, Elizabeth, you said something about, the sort of entering the happy dream. And that's what it is. We're going from these nightmares as we start out on the spiritual journey, or before we even feel like there is another way. It's like we're in this nightmare where things don't work and there's a lot of struggle. And even if things do work, they can be taken away because they're of no real substance. If we strive and achieve things in the world, and our whole personality and strength seemingly is propped up in those kind of worldly symbols of status, they can go away in a minute, and then where are you left, right? So even when you achieve anything here, you're still kind of in a nightmare. And the whole point of the spiritual journey is to end up in the happy dream where you assume your proper place in the awakening through prayer with the spirit and through listening to the spirit's guidance and this inner wisdom that everybody has available to them all the time. Yeah, the happy dream is what we really want to get to, and that's why we do this, and it works. It's so worth it. There's darkness that comes up, and in those moments where it feels like we have to start addressing things in new ways, it can feel really scary because there's so much of our personality that's attached to doing things the way it's used to doing things. And with these kind of new roles from the spirit, there it is new and it's unknown and it can feel a little scary, but the more we really step into that and let ourselves grow spiritually and mature, there's something really solid, truly solid, that starts to establish itself in ourselves that can't be taken away. It can't fall away because it's not of this world. And that's really awesome.
Yeah, I love everything you said. And I always enjoy how you make it really practical. The example of working things through in your own mind and in your relationship with your husband. That's the like boots on the ground, reality of navigating this world and the symbols in the world, and then bringing it to like, what are we really doing here? What we're really here to do is to get out of the way. And that's ultimately what we're saying when we're saying, like, find your spiritual job. That actually, for me, means that we are handing it all over to the spirit and allowing the spirit to use us as a vehicle. And that we start to see actually the me, the I, the my is actually not doing anything. That it's actually spirit that is delivering the love, that's delivering the resources, that's delivering the opportunities, that's delivering the vehicle to get to wherever you're going. That we start to see when we play our part that we're just being moved, that we're just being, picked up and plopped into the right place at the right time to do what spirit needs of us. And that's really, the personality is so pernicious and so seems so real and true, but I really, from the opportunities I've had in whatever arena to sit with people and kind of grok what's really there, we all just want to be in that flow, in that alignment, and it's available right here, right now. So I'm really glad that we got to go here today. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice little wrap up there from you, I think. And yeah, it's worth it. Just want to say that again. The whole thing's worth it. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but it just means you're not at the end yet. You know, you haven't come out on the other side of the tunnel yet. So it's always worth it to keep going, even when things feel really dark, and keep praying and, you know, do the things that get you in touch with spirit, whatever that looks like for you, so that you can really, so that you can get in touch with what it is that spirit wants from you, because that's the most important thing. So, thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you to the listeners. It's always a joy to do these, and we're always happy to do them, I think. So we'll see you next time.
Lots of love.
Bye for now.
You drop thoughts down and they